Lately, I've been thinking about book series. I did like a top 10 book series that I've read like a month or two ago, and then recently I finished the first Law trilogy. Recently also I started A Song of Ice and Fire, and then as a fan of reading, that of course overflows into all the series that I want to eventually get to. So, as if I really need to start any more book series, considering how many that I'm just like somewhere in the middle of reading right now. But that's not the point, and that definitely won't stop me from starting 10 more, because that's what we're going to talk about here in today's video. 10 series that I would like to start reading. 5 books and 5 manga in no particular order. Let's go. So like I said, no particular order, although I will go like book, manga, just to keep it varied. Also, I want to say that this month, for the month of June, I will be my first ever Patreon pick, where my patrons pick something that I read, either book or manga, and then I will read that, and I will do a dedicated book review on whatever the patron pick for that month was. This month is The Atrocity Archives by Charles Stross, and that book was picked by advanced patron Greymalk. So, as well as select videos going up early on the Patreon, and all of those videos being ad-free and uncensored. Now you get a hand in picking what I read every single month, or at least one of the things that I read. Anyway, look for that. It'll probably go up late in June sometime. Now, the first book series that I'm going to talk about here is the Dandelion Dynasty. And that is, quite frankly, the reason I put this on the list was simply because I watch a lot of Murphy content, Murphy Napier, and she speaks so phenomenally highly of this, and it sounded like something that I might be interested in. Then I saw the artwork on the edging of the books, and it's just phenomenal. Like, what is this? Are these ships in the water? Are these ships flying? I can't even tell. Is that a dragon or like a wyvern flying through the sky? What is even happening right here? And it just piqued my interest completely. Then, on top of that, they're written by Ken Liu, who I have never read before, but I do know that he did a lot of the translations for the Three-Body Problem, and that book is just absolutely amazing. I know that just because you're the translator of a different book series that was written by somebody else doesn't mean that you're a good writer, but if you're over here in America writing epic fantasy, then you're going to go over there and like translate a book from another Chinese person and try and help usher their literature into the United States. I don't know, that's just a neat thing to be doing in general, and I'm like, that sounds cool. Then I hear some of the styles and the way the books are written and structured, and then some real weird side tangents that he likes to go off on randomly in the books. It just, everything that I've heard so far just piqued my interest. Also, it looks like it has kind of that interesting, almost like I don't want to say foreign vibe to it, because I like reading things that aren't strictly I'm American, and I don't like reading things that are so strictly American. Like, for example, Metro 33 was just fascinating to me, being written as a post-apocalyptic future, dystopian future, but from the perspective of being written by a Russian in Russia. Then, of course, the Three-Body Problem being a futuristic first contact sci-fi book written by a Chinese person from the perspective of being in China. This just looks like it might have some of those characteristics that I love so much, those different angles, those different perspectives and viewpoints and ways of writing and ways of looking at the material that you're writing. Maybe I could just be vastly overestimating the qualities of Ken Liu. This could just be a big swing and a miss for me. We'll see if I ever get around to it. Next up is Claymore. Now, Claymore is, I don't know, an action battle fantasy manga that I have been hearing about ever since I started reading Berserk, which was forever ago, for like 2 years now in my comments. I constantly, almost every time I do a Berserk video or something similar to that, I get the comment, you have to read Claymore. And I kind of looked into it and I dabbled around with looking into it, and I swear I have seen this. I think I watched it, the anime. I want to say if it was on Netflix, I probably watched it. I do not remember anything about it or what happened, but just looking at it, I think I've seen this before. And then on top of that, every time I look up the manga Claymore and I just see any image whatsoever of the paneling, and then I read a comment that says, you need to read this. And I just go, yes, I think I do. This looks fabulous. But and the way things work, the way life works, and the way all of my reading schedules go, and the things that I'm a mood reader, so I tend to just really kind of grab things at random and what I'm in the mood for at that second in time, or things that I just get super hyped about maybe. And it just keeps somehow slipping further back onto my TBR, and it keeps getting away from me, but I want to read it really bad. Next up would be the Sun Eater series. I really, really have recently kind of got jonesing for this one. I wanted to read it like a year or two ago, around the time when Mike's Book Reviews was really in on it, and I think that's when he discovered it, and he did a bunch of videos about it, and it sounded good at the time, and I kind of really wanted to read it, and then I forgot about it until recently. Now it's kind of spiking again in YouTube land, and it's brought it back to my attention, and now I'm like, shit, I did really want to read that, didn't I? And I hope that it's good, because YouTube has led me astray before with, say, the Expanse series back there. It was fine. I did a review of all of them, but I only read that because I got super excited to read it, because BookTube really hyped it up. And I got in there, and it was just, I've said this before, it was just kind of average. It was a really good series, don't get me wrong, but it was just average. And if you're going to spend 9 books buried in a series, God, I hope it's better than average. And that's kind of how the Sun Eater series for me feels. It feels super YouTubey. It feels super hyped up by the booktubers. And then I get so scared because sometimes those don't work out for me. And then I look at the covers, and they look super YouTubey again, and everything about it. No offense to the book covers, they just look, those look like something a booktuber would get excited about, which none of that bodes well for me. None of that's generating hype for me. But then I see Christopher Ruocchio do interviews, and I see that man talk, and he starts to talk about the things that he loves and the things that have influenced his books and his series and his writing. And I realize the things that Christopher Ruocchio loves are the things that I love. And he wants to just go all in on Dune. And then he starts talking about writing books, and he's like, well, I just realized that I should probably get rid of this reference, because 5 pages ago I just had a Book of the New Sun, reference, so I should probably not put them back to back in the book. And I'm like, oh my God, this sounds wonderful. Tell me more, Chris. It's just one of those things. Oh, it sounds good when he starts talking about it. Anyway, so I got super excited, and I want to read that. But once again, we'll see. Next up is Inuyasha, and that is just because I watched that back when I was younger. Actually, I had all of the DVDs, like all of them, and I watched it multiple times through. I know the story of Inuyasha better than just about any other anime. I may just be, not because it's necessarily better than the others, just I think I watched it more than any of the other ones. And then I kind of recently got my daughter into watching it because she's got into anime, and I was like, you should watch Inuyasha, and she got super hooked on it, and then she was super upset when it just kind of ends and the story doesn't end because they ran out of source material. And I was like, oh, I forgot about that. Anyway, so it's actually back there. I bought the whole set because she really wanted to finish the story. And I was like, well, why don't you just read it? Because she's been real big into reading Demon Slayer, and I got her into reading Spy Family, both of which I haven't actually read yet, but I got her into reading them. So, and she says they're great, so I'll take her word for it. I mean, she's 10, she knows what she's talking about. But anyway, I went ahead and bought the whole series because I knew I would eventually want to pick all those up. So, they're just sitting back there taunting me at this point. Now, the next one I'm going to have to say is Malazan. And I know I'm saying that wrong because I don't know what the actual way is. It's like something like Malazan or Malazan or Malazan. I don't know. All I know is Malazan sounds so much cooler than any other way. I'm going to just have to say it wrong for now. And I don't actually have physical copies to hold up for most of these things, but this one I do because I was at the used bookstore a month ago. It's been a few weeks now, and I just happened to see this on the shelf, and I said, I know what that is. And so I picked it up and I bought it, and it felt like a mistake at the time. It still feels like it was a mistake. I don't know what I'm going to do with this book series. The things you hear are outrageous, with just how insane and complicated and big, and the book's smarter than I was, or I don't even know. It's just, it's crazy. But you know what? If I can make it through the Book of the New Sun and understand that series, kind of, for the most part, this shouldn't be that hard, right? And then I took it to work with me one day, and I read it on my break, or I read the prologue like on my breaks, and I was like, oh, well, that's kind of interesting. So now I'm just, I might be too far in at this point to back out. I don't know. We'll see. But this feels like a mistake. I will just continue to repeat that. Next up, Aposimz. I need a reason to read it? I ranked all of my favorite manga that I have read, and both Knights of Sidonia and Blam made it onto the list. As a matter of fact, Blam is my favorite manga ever written, period. And I just love Nihei. And then when you're walking around the bookstore, you always see the Aposimz, just because it's the most recent thing that he's written. And I hear very, very polarizing things about it. I hear that it's very good, and then I hear other people, it was bad, Nihei's fallen off, he feels like he doesn't care anymore. But then other people say that it was profound. I don't know. So with how polarizing the reviews on that one are, because you have stuff like Biomega, where people are like, it's just great, everybody loves it, it's universally praised. And then you have something like Aposimz, where it is not universally praised. It's very polarizing to the audience, which piques my personal interest, because I want to know, why is it polarizing, and where do I land on that spectrum of people? Especially for somebody that I know how much I absolutely really adore his writing and his art in particular. So that one is on the list no matter what. Next up for the books is going to be The Age of Madness, and that is just absolutely, actually I do have one of those, two of them as a matter of fact. I found those at the used bookstore too. I could have got them down. I won't. And that's just an obvious one. I just finished the first law. As I said in the video, it kind of started off a little bit weak, but by the time it ended, I was very much in, and I was very much there. Very strong ending for a trilogy. So moving on to The Age of Madness is just like a no-brainer, especially considering that once again, everything you hear just says that it's the best thing ever. It is twice the series that the first law ever was. Everything that's great about Joe Abercrombie gets better with this. It might be the best thing he's ever written, so people say. But with how much I enjoyed the end of that, and this being the logical next step, maybe? I don't know, there's some standalones in there. But we're talking about series in this video, and I really, really want to get to that one. But that one actually might get pushed further away, because I just read some Abercrombie. Let's get some other things in here first before I just go diving into another Abercrombie series, but it's still definitely one I want to read. Next up for the manga is Blade of the Immortal. Now, this is another one that I've been getting requests for forever, pretty much ever since I started reading Vagabond. This time, as soon as I started with Vagabond, everybody's like, no. Blade of the Immortal. And back to I go to the used bookstore like at least once a week just to nose around, see if there's anything new. And they had like 4 of those deluxe editions at the used bookstore for like, I don't even know how much they were. They were super cheap. I was like, are you for real right now? So I went ahead and grabbed them because I felt like it would be a mistake not to. I still have not read any of them. They're just kind of sitting back there. But actually, as a matter of fact, one of those suggestions always comes from that Gray Malt guy, the guy who picked my Patreon read this month. And the second he recommended me that book, I even shot him a message on Patreon. I was like, are you for real right now? I figured you, of all people, when I asked for suggestions of what I was going to read, would immediately be like, dude, Blade of the Immortal. And he just messaged me back, there's always next month. And I'm like, oh, okay, all right. Anyway, Blade of the Immortal is absolutely on there, and I just flipped through those periodically, just looking at some of the artwork and some of the character designs and I want to get to it so badly, but there's just too many things to read and not enough hours in the day. It's a problem. At last for the books, I'm gonna have to say Foundation. This is another one. I've had this thing sitting on my shelf for at least 2 years, and I just have not gotten around to it. This is like a leather-bound book of the Foundation series. And I who is as big of an avid fan of science fiction as I am, and I love classic science fiction. It is maybe my favorite genre of all time, maybe. And I haven't read Foundation. The fuck? That's like one of the core tenets of science fiction, and it's just missing from my entire... What is no? Anyway... So I need to get onto some Foundation at some point in my life. I feel like a failure as a science fiction fan not having that series under my belt. And last but definitely not least would be the manga, The Drifting Classroom. And I don't even know much about this one. I know almost nothing. I know that I see it every time I go to the bookstore, and they just look utterly beautiful. Even just the book itself looks good, but then you pick it up and you kind of peruse through it, and it is a horror manga about a school that's teleported to, I want to say, the future and and it's a post-apocalyptic future. Call me intrigued right there. Then you kind of open up the book and flip through it, and the artwork just looks delicious, and it looks very... almost, I want to say, maybe Junji Ito-esque. Not quite, because he's got kind of a whole flair and flavor all of his own. But it's kind of a little bit more of a classical style and less of the big... I don't know how to explain it, but it just looks great. And the premise sounds great. And I just like a good horror story. I don't know. But it's, like I said, I know very little, but my interest level is relatively high. And once again, that's another one that I get a lot of comments on, with people recommending it to me quite frequently. And I have so far as my YouTube community is concerned and my YouTube comments are concerned, they have not really led me astray. I don't know who is watching my videos and giving me recommendations, but they are quite good recommendations. They've done right by me more often than not. Anyway, I should say thank you to all of you. Anyway, that's the 10 series that I currently have really got on my radar that I want to go ahead and I want to start reading. Anyway, everybody, as always, the link for my Patreon's in the description below. The link for my Discord's in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.